So welcome everyone to the session today on talking about Microsoft Lists versus using your Excel spreadsheets. So Microsoft Lists is one of your apps that is available through 365. A lot of times you're going to hear SharePoint lists. Lists really don't just reside within SharePoint though, and we're going to actually see that today. Lists are their own app, so you can open it just like you open up Excel, you open up Outlook, those types of things. But we also can use a SharePoint list directly in SharePoint. We also can use a list inside Microsoft Teams in a channel as a tab. So we have different places that we can access them. Now, we will take a look at how we create a list. We'll start with a template. We'll do a from scratch list, but we'll also see how we can transition a list from Excel and actually bring it into a Microsoft list. So if you've already started it in Excel and you realize you would probably be better off using a list, you'll have an opportunity to see how that can work for you. So first off, why do we want to transition from from Excel into a SharePoint list? Well, one of the reasons is it is real-time collaboration. It is a cloud-based application, so every time a list is created, it is automatically in the cloud. If you're using Excel, you're using Word, etc., they don't have to be saved to a cloud. They could be saved to a different location where they will not have live collaboration. So if they're saved to your desktop, a network drive, you don't get the live collaboration. But with Microsoft Lists, it's always a shared file. Okay. We also have different permission controls that we can do. It's more of a granular level of permissions that we have within SharePoint with lists. We also have seamless integration into different Power apps that we have, and of course into Microsoft Teams as well. It does have data validation, but if you're familiar with Excel, Excel has data validation as well, but it is a manual process where data validation is actually built in to a list, and you'll see that here today. Also, they have different ways of doing views and filters. Views, as we'll see today, can also be saved. There are some saving capabilities within Excel, but it is quite the manual process. It's a little bit easier, and it's meant to be used more so in an actual list. So Microsoft Lists have a lot of benefits and a lot of really great tools behind the scenes. So the purpose of them is to, just like a normal list, if you think about making a list on paper, the purpose of using Microsoft Lists is to track information. We want to have an easy way to manage specific information in columns and rows. Well, you're probably thinking Excel can do that. Excel can do columns and rows, but when you stop and think about Excel, it has over 16,000 columns across. It has over 1 million rows going down. Do we always need all of that? Do we always need multiple sheets? That kind of a thing. That's where a list is going to be very different. There are built-in templates in both Excel and in Microsoft Lists. Like I said, we will take advantage of seeing one of those today. Also, we have easy ways to do different views within Microsoft Lists. We also have an integration to Microsoft Forms from our lists as well. We have a lot of automation processes that we can be using in Microsoft Lists that are built into the application, where we don't have to go through Power tools like Power Automate to be able to tell the system we want to do automation. Just like with SharePoint document libraries, we have the same and even other built-in Power tools that we can be using. And like I said before, the collaboration tools built in are wonderful as well. Now, of course, when you think about Excel, Excel is great for analyzing large amounts of data. It does calculations. It can do finance modeling. It can do pivot tables, those types of things. So if that's what you're looking for, something that's going to be simply a built-in calculator, something that you want to be able to do that analysis on your data, then Excel is probably the right choice for you to use. Plus, it has macros. So if you want to automate some processes, if you create a macro, you would have that in Excel. We don't use macros in other applications like lists. Excel also can be standalone. Excel can be used as a desktop app. It can be used as an online app. It can be used as a mobile app. So it's very different from lists. Lists are always an online application. There isn't a difference really from going through Teams or going through the online app, etc. If you want charts, you want other graphical objects to be available with your data, Excel is probably going to be the choice that you want to make, definitely, because we don't do those kind of things in a list. A list is really for, yes, we can make it look pretty. We can see our data with conditional formatting, things like that, but it is more for seeing things in columns and rows. Okay, so lists are generally easier to set up because of the fact that we don't have so many columns, so many rows right away that we have to deal with. The customization is very straightforward when it comes to utilizing Microsoft Lists, and you'll definitely see that when we take a look at how to create a list from scratch. The collaboration of this being an online tool is, of course, unbelievable. There's so many times that I've had an Excel file that unfortunately I'd saved to my desktop. I still had it on a flash drive, etc. And I went to share it with somebody, and of course you can't do that. A list is always going to be shareable. Now, just a few top benefits of lists before we dive into take a look at what a list is. Number one, real-time collaboration, as I have mentioned. Also, those custom views and filters that you'll see today. The data validation and the data integrity. We have different types of options when it comes to, so you'll see this when we go into a list, but I think of Microsoft Lists as being in between Excel and an Access database. It's more like a database when it comes to the columns of information, also known as a field like a database is, where we talk about columns in Excel, but you have to format the cells to be the right data type, not with a list. With a list, when we create a column, we're choosing what type of data is going to go in it. There is validation rules that are built in to a list and into Excel. That's a little bit beyond the scope of our session here today, but we do have it in both. A little bit easier, I think, to use in lists. But we also have permissions and security options available. We talked about the automation that we have with Power Automate features built right in. And we have strong integration with our other applications. We can have triggers that are set up. We can have it available, the list available within Microsoft Teams, Microsoft SharePoint. We can have triggers set up that are going to automatically give us notifications via Outlook or via Teams. It even has an integration, of course, with Excel, which we'll see a little bit here today. But it is something that is embedded into a SharePoint site, and it's embedded into a Teams channel as a tab that you can add in. Okay, so we have also mobile-friendly options with Microsoft Lists, is what I meant to say. You can download the app and have your list available directly through an app. We have history, but not just on a file. This is line history. So there's an audit trail with the records of information that we are using within a list as well, where of course in Excel we have history if it's saved to a cloud, where we can go back and restore a previous version of a file, but it's very different here in Microsoft Lists. We also have some custom formatting that can be used, and it's better suited really than Excel if you really just want to focus on the content of your data. So a list is not going to be the answer for everything. I still use a ton of different Excel files, but more and more over the past couple of years, I've been using Microsoft Lists. So a quick side-by-side comparison, that real-time collaboration, it's possible in Excel, of course, but not there automatically. Also, the views, there is, of course, manual views that we can create with doing filters. We could do pivot tables in Excel. Built-in rules. We don't need to have formulas to do things in a list. We can create drop downs. We can create rules based on data validation. It has wonderful setup of different templates. Of course, that Power Automate integration, as I've mentioned. So just kind of a side-by-side list comparing the two. Now, where exactly are you going to go to use a list? Well, let me show you a couple of examples. First, I can be in a Microsoft SharePoint site. So if I come into a SharePoint site, on the left-hand side of my current site, I actually have a couple of lists. I have a policy list and I have a task list. So if someone has already added a list to a SharePoint site, if you are a member of that site, you have access to that list. If I go to this policy list, this is going to show you what a list is going to look like. There's only so many columns in every list. It's up to us which columns we want. We don't have to have all those empty cells, all those empty other columns like we would in Excel. So this particular one has it's for keeping track of company policies. It has when is the policy due, what is the status. It's got a subject, it's got a title, a person responsible, which is an interactive column, which I'll show you how we can actually use that. But notice when I'm hesitating on it, it brings up my profile information. So we have live links to information which we do not get in Microsoft Excel. And when you look at the user interface, at the very top, this is almost identical to the user interface that you see when you are in a SharePoint document library. On the right-hand side are going to be view options, where you can see we have a filter icon. We also have grouping, which is not available in Excel very easily anyway. We also have a sorting icon. This particular list that I'm in does have some custom views. That's what these tabs on the right-hand side are for. If I click calendar, it's going to open up a calendar view. We don't get that in Excel. Also, I could click new view. I just didn't name that view. Normally, I would have a name to my views, but just so you could see, this is another view that I had recently created. So every list can have different views and different fields that are available, which are the columns of information. So that was just a brief example of what an existing list looks like. If I wanted to add a new list to a SharePoint site, like if I'm on the home page of a SharePoint site, I can add a list by clicking on the new icon at the top of the window. Depending on, of course, the site and depending on your permission levels, if I click new, I could go straight into list. From here, I could choose from different ways to start a list. Notice at the top I have list, which I could just create a standard list. I could create a form, I could create a gallery, I could create a calendar, or I could create a board. We'll talk about those in a different session, but just so you're aware, I'll just do lists today. We also could start a new list from an Excel file, a CSV, or we could use an existing list as well. So we could take an existing Microsoft list and import that in to start a new list, just so you're aware that we could do that. But down at the bottom, we have different template options. Sometimes a template is actually coming from your organization because we can share these lists. So a list, if I create it here in SharePoint, it's going to be available to everybody that is a member of this SharePoint site. If I create a list in Microsoft Teams, everybody that's a member of that team will automatically have access to that. But if I create a list in the Microsoft app called Lists. I'm the only one that has rights to it until I share it with others. So it is shareable, which most of the time, most of my lists are shared with others. But I do have a few lists that I don't share. So a list can be your personal list or it can be a list shared with others. But keep in mind, if you do it in SharePoint, you do it in Teams, it's automatically shared. Okay. Now I'm not going to create one from this window right now. I'm going to close this and instead I'm going to go to my Microsoft account. So I'm going to go to my Microsoft account on my left-hand side. I'm going to open my apps launcher. From here, of course, I can access all of my apps. So if you go to office.com, however you access your Microsoft account, you will, of course, have access to every app that is available to you as a user. So from here, what I'm going to do is open up this app called Lists. So here's the little icon for it. Once I click on it, it's going to take me into the List app where I will see up at the top I could create a new list, but I have my favorites category. Then I have recent lists, and I have a tab also to get into my lists. So you could see I have quite a few recent lists. And then if I go to my list, these are other lists that I have access to as well. These are the two that I have saved that I just have as shortcuts, just so you could see. Now, I'm going to create a new list, which, by the way, is only going to be available to me because I'm creating it through the app itself. So just like the window we saw a minute ago going through SharePoint, I get the same options. So one of the options is to go to a template. A lot of times I use a template. Microsoft does kind of revamp these templates a little bit. Matthew, did someone have a question before I continue?
Yeah, someone was wondering if there is a way to set up a notification email when a person's name is added to a person responsible type column. They're not talking about setting up their own notifications, but notifications for the list rather.
Yes, 100%. And that's actually one of the examples I'll show. So that was a great question.
All
They're
right, I
feeding
guess
right into my demo.
perfect.
Awesome. So I'll get to that in just one second, but just so you could see, you have all of these templates that you could actually start from. So if you want to do an event itinerary, you want to do an employee onboarding, you want to create content scheduler, you want to do a job application tracker, all these different lists are available that you could start. So if I click on this one called Issue Tracker, just so you know what you're going to see, is it's going to show you the columns that it's going to come with. It gives you a description of it on the right-hand side as well. Then we would just say Use Template. It would automatically open it with those columns, but the columns could be modified. Then you would just come in and add in your data. It doesn't really come with records of information added in, but you could add your own in. Now, I'm not really going to do a template today because I want to show you how you would possibly start your own and how you would bring in an Excel file and start from an Excel file. So I'm going to create a new list by clicking the icon at the top of this window. And I'm going to click Create on the list icon at the very top. So this is going to give me a blank list. On the right-hand side, I'm going to name it. So first I'm going to give it a name, and then I need to add in the columns that I want to have available to track data. I'm going to say that this is going to be the ABC Company's employee onboarding. We're going to do some onboard tracking. So ABC Company employee onboard tracking. Kind of a long name. I got a little winded there. But I'm going to click Create, and that list will be created with me I'll get a default column which can be renamed. You don't have to keep it. It will come in as being a title. But you can click on the icon where it comes in where it says title. You can see that we have different column settings from this menu, and I can click Rename. Because what if I actually want that to be the employee name? So if I'm going to have this employee onboard tracker, I want to keep track of who the employee is going to be. So I'm going to rename this title, and I'm actually going to call this employee name. So by default, you always get that title column, but you can change it. I'm going to click Save for renaming that column. You could see that first column now is employee name. On the right-hand side of that, I'm going to click Add Column. And when you come into Add Column, this is where you're going to see a list of the default data types that we can choose from. So very different than Excel, where Excel, if you want something to be a date field, you have to format it as a date. If you want it to be currency, accounting, that kind of a thing, you have to actually format it. So let's say that next I want to have a start date. So we want to keep track of when this person starts with the company. I'm going to choose a date and time and click Next. Then on the right-hand side is where I can fill out the details. So I'm going to put in date of hire. I could put in a description. I could change the type of field that I'm adding in. I could include the time. I could have a friendly format if I wanted to, and I could choose a default value. So if this person is going to be added in, and most of the time when we add them in, their start date is today, I could actually choose that I wanted to automatically include today's date. I'm not going to, but just so you know, that is an option. Now, this could be a calculated field, and there's more options down at the bottom where we could say require that this column contains information. So we can say this can't be left blank. We also could enforce unique values. So those are database type features that we have in lists that we do not get in Excel. We also have column validation options down at the bottom, so that would be including your data validation features. I'm not going to do all of that today. I'm just going to go ahead and click Save. So now I'm going to have that column that is already formatted as a date. So besides those two, I probably want to know what department they're going to be in, and I'm going to do a choice for that. I'm going to choose a choice so we can have a drop-down field. I'm going to click Next. I'm going to give it a name, and I'm going to call it Department. I, of course, could put in a description. I'm going to go to my choice one, and I'm going to put in what choices do they have for what departments. So maybe we have a sales department. Maybe we have factory. Maybe we have HR. I could click Add Choice to add additional options. So maybe we have accounting. Maybe we have choice 5 being IT, etc. You would come in and add your choices. Now keep in mind you can always come back and make changes to this. So if you forgot one, you could always come back and change it. Do I want to allow for people to be able to add things in manually? No. That's part of data validation. We want them to choose just from the list. I'm going to click Save to add that column in. Right now, I'm just going to add in one more column just to get our feet wet here. The other column that I'm going to add in is going to be a person. I'm going to add in person. Person is going to be where we can actually add in information coming from your global address list or your contact list that can be whoever else you want to keep track of. So who's going to be their supervisor? Who's the person that's going to be doing their training? Whatever your case might be, that they could, if they're doing onboarding, maybe they have an onboarding buddy that they're working with through the HR department. So just kind of think of the things that you might need to be adding in. I'm going to put in manager's name. Manager's name. So we want to know who their manager's name is. Now, if I want this to be a text field, I could have it be a choice field. You know, I could have done it that way as well, but I just did it as person. I'm going to click Save. Now, of course, I would continue adding in other things, like maybe I want to have a column that basically is their onboarding status. So I'm going to say I want that to be a choice. I'm just going to add this one more. And I'm going to say next, and I'm going to name it onboarding status. And then I'm going to go into my choices, and maybe they haven't started yet. Maybe their onboarding is in progress. And maybe I want it to be completed. I'll just do that. Now I'm going to click save and I'm going to leave those columns, but of course you could see you can always go back to add column at any time and add in additional information. But how do you actually add in a new employee? How do you add records of information? You go to the menu at the top. At the top left, you'll find Add New Item. When you click Add New Item, you get a form view to be able to fill in the values that you want for each field. Each individual record has multiple columns or fields of data that you would enter in. So if I come in and I put in Bob Smith, I can press tab, by the way, to navigate to the next record, the next field, I should say. I'm going to say the start date was Tuesday. What department are they in? I get a drop down. Who is their manager? I'm going to say their manager is student one. What is their onboarding status? Well, maybe it's in progress. Notice that we have different colors that we can actually assign to these as well. It is giving me the option for adding in attachments. I'm not going to add in an attachment. I'm going to click save. But just so you could see, that's how a record gets added in. The menu across the top is related to working with the entire list, just like we have with a SharePoint document library. We can edit in grid view. Edit in grid view gives you the ability of being able to edit multiple records at the same time. You can click that icon to exit the grid view or click it to turn it back on. I'll show you more of that when we're actually in another list that has more records in it. But just so you could see, I can also share this list. So if I click the share icon, you can choose who do you want to share this list. It's exactly the same as sharing a file. So very user friendly. So if I want to share it with a coworker, I could choose who it is. On the right hand side, go to the pencil. By default, they'll be able to edit the list where they can add in records, those kind of things. They can edit items, or we'll just say that they can't edit, they can only view. Just so you know, you have those options. You can type in a message. Here is the list we will use to track employee onboarding. Just so you could see you, oops, I didn't spell that correctly, but it is spell check, thank goodness. Then of course you click send like you normally would. That person's going to receive an email message with a link to the list. They will have access to that list from now on then, unless we of course change our permissions. So this is going to be one way to get started. So let me show you another way to use lists. If I go to Microsoft Teams, just so you're aware, Microsoft Teams also has access to lists. I already have a list in this channel, so I went to Microsoft Teams. On the left-hand side, I went to Teams. So I went to Teams inside Teams. I went to this team called Accounting Department. I went to this channel called Accounts Payable. You do not get a list by default. So only the channels that need a list, you can add a list to it. By the way, there was a recent change the other day. There's no longer a Files tab in Microsoft Teams. It's now called Shared. So just so you're aware of that. But if I go to, I have this list called Issue Tracker, which I created from a template. Matthew, does someone have a question?
Yeah, I thought I'd try to grab you before we hop into the next topic here. Someone is wondering if there is a way to create a formula like you would in Excel. They have an example here. So there would be a column that shows when the new employee reaches their 3-month probation date based on their date of hire.
Their date of hire. Yes, absolutely. Yeah. You can create a formula to do that. 100%. Okay. But you can also get a notification. So if you want to see the date, yes. If you want to store that date, yes. But otherwise, we can also get a notification that says it's their 3-month or whatever it is you want it to be based on.
Great. Okay. All right. Awesome. Thank you.
Okay, you bet. So anyway, just so you could see when I came into this issue tracker, this was actually one of the template options available, and I do use the issue tracker template a lot. When I'm managing projects, we need to keep track of issues that we have within the project, so this is how I do it. So just so you could see when I was talking about edit in grid view, I'm going to click on that icon from the top because I had a couple more records here. I can actually select more than one file at a time when I am in that feature called grid view. So if I want to go and change any information, I want to have an issue source, or I want to have associated files or images, I want to do anything, I can actually work with multiple files at the same time. I can go to their menu, I could go into edit, I could delete multiples. You could see that there's a lot of different choices when you go to the ... which is just like SharePoint, a SharePoint document library. Here's your version history. I can set up an alert, I can manage alerts, I can manage access, put in comments, we can edit, lots of different choices from our menu. Okay, now I'm going to exit my grid view for right now just so you could see. I just wanted you to be aware of the fact that you can use lists in Microsoft Teams. I can add a brand new list by going to the tabs at the top, going to the end. I could go to the end. Oh, I'm sorry. I go to my tabs. I could go to the end of my tabs, do my plus sign to add a new tab, and then I can choose apps. And from there, I could choose to create a new list. So just so you could see, you could start a new list to be available directly in Teams as well. Now, I'm not really going to do that, but just so you're aware that that's another place. And if you do it that way, just like in SharePoint, whoever is a part of that team will automatically have access to that list. Okay. But I want to create one more list before I kind of show you some other bells and whistles, like with views and different things. I want to import an Excel spreadsheet. So I happen to have an Excel spreadsheet. Let me share that on the screen for you to see. It's not super long or anything. It's got 30 different records of information, but it's got some generic task information. It's got who the owner of the task is. It's got a priority column. It's got a status. It's got a due date, and it's got a comments column. If I'm working in Excel and I'm looking at this and I'm realizing, you know what? I want to be able to, I want to have that owner be a person column. And I want to be able to have some automation that is triggered based on who that person is. Or I want to have, different views that we could have that are available that we don't get to do in Excel. I don't do a lot of calculations on this task list. I don't really need, 16,387 columns going across. These are all the columns I need. If you start thinking about it, do I really need to have all of these columns of data? You might want to really consider using a list instead. So the list does need to be saved as a table in Excel because lists are based off tables. So I have this saved as a table. So I converted this range of cells into a table. I can see on my table design tab, on the left-hand side, it is called task table. So the table has been named. Okay. Now what I'm going to do is use this list to create a new list in Microsoft Lists. And I'm going to do that by going back to the internet. I'm going to go back to my app, my list app, and I'm going to start from here. Okay. So what I'm going to do is click create. So I went to the lists. I'm going to click create and I'm going to say import from Excel. I'm going to say import from Excel. I'm going to choose upload file. Otherwise, I did have my OneDrive right there that I could directly go to if I wanted to do it that way as well. But I'm going to navigate to where I have this file saved at. So I have my Excel file, and here's my Microsoft Lists file. I'm going to click open. it automatically is going to look for any tables that are in that workbook. It's not going to look at just one sheet. It looks at the whole thing for any tables. You can see up at the top, I only have one table that was in that Excel file, so it automatically chose that table. And you can see that I automatically see all the data from that Excel file. Over on the left-hand side, it says check the column types below and choose a list type if the current selection isn't correct. So here it's looking at this as being the title. I could have it be a single line text. This one is looking at as a single line text. I could have that be multi-line choice. I could say don't import it. This is a single line, single line. This is not seeing it as a date because of the way this date was formatted. Just so you know, the way this date was formatted, it did not recognize it as being a date. Okay. Also, this, of course, I want it to be a multi-line just in case the comment gets a little bit longer, but I'm going to leave these and just click next. I would then name my list, and I'm going to call it Microsoft List, and I'm going to click Create. So it's automatically able to take that information from an Excel file and bring it into lists. So, and this is how I've gotten started with a lot of mine because of the fact that I started in Excel because that's what we know. Microsoft Lists has now become more and more common for me to use because Excel is an overkill. All I need is one sheet of this data. And I want to have some built-in automation processes that I can be using based on that information. I don't want to have to jump through hoops on things. So this to me has really been a very helpful tool. But just so you can see that it automatically does use the column headings coming from Excel as the names of each of these columns. Now, of course, I can add in new columns as well. So I could go and say I want to add in a new column. So I could start tracking other information if I wanted to. But I just wanted you to see a brief example of how this comes in. Now, this date column, I'm going to go to this column settings. So from the drop down from this date column, you can see that I can go in and edit this column where right now it says type. It's a single line of text. If I say that I want this to be a date and time field, because it didn't come in saying date and time, I want to choose it to be a date and time. I'm going to click save. It's going to say saving this type of column may result in loss of data. Same things that we would get if we were doing things in an Access database. Are you sure that you want to change this column from single line to date and time? I'm going to click save. It automatically converted those dates. So it didn't recognize them based on the formatting. If they were formatted like this back in Excel, then the list would have recognized them better. So sometimes it doesn't recognize a perfect example. Like this priority column, if I go to this column settings and click edit, I could then say that I want this to be a choice column and put in what my choices are. So it doesn't automatically, magically do that for us. Just so you know, there is some manual process that you would have to do if you're coming from Excel. Okay? Just so you're aware. I'm not going to change the rest of this because we're going to run out of time here real quick, and I want to show you some of these other features. And to show you some of these other features, I'm going to go back to an existing list. I'm going to go to Microsoft Teams, and I'm going to go into the accounts payable, and well, that one's not a very long list either. I thought I had a longer list that I wanted to quick use with you, but oh shoot, I think I might have deleted that team from my last one. So let me change my mind here, and I'm just going to jump back into my lists. And I'm going to stay right here just for ease of understanding, I'm going to add in a new column, and I'm going to add in a column for person. And I'm going to click next. I'm going to name this. So this is based on tasks, and I'm going to say assigned to. So we want to assign this task to a specific person. I'm going to click save. So of course, now we can go back to any of these existing tasks and we would be able to edit them. If I go to the menu at the top, I could choose, because I selected a task, I could choose edit, and I could edit multiple values at one time. So I could choose who I want to have for any of these fields, just so you could see. I could change it. I'm going to go to this assign to because I want to assign both of these to the same person. I'm going to click save. So I just edited 2 records at the same time. Let me back up and show you how I just did that. So when we select by going to the left-hand side of a record, just so you could see, I can hesitate and I get the little circle. I can select multiple tasks at once. I can then use the edit command from the ribbon. It opens up edit 3 items because that's how many I have selected. I could choose the priority. I could choose the start date, the status date. I could put in who I want to assign them the task to. Whatever it is that we need, we have the capability of adding that in to multiple records at the same time. Okay, just so you could see how that works. Okay, then I just clicked off and it unselected those. But let me show you some of the other great features that we have that correspond with this, which, by the way, just so you're aware of this going on in the background, I'm going to go to Outlook here real quick, because just so you know, this is what student 1 has received for, here's the link for that list that I had sent to that person. Okay, so just so you know what it's going to look like for them. But I want to take this list, this task list, and I want to automate some processes, because if I'm assigned to a task, I want to be notified. Or what if we need to notify a specific person when the due date is coming up? What if we need to remind them 5 days before the due date? Or if I have a policy that's going to expire and I need to know 30 days prior to that. We have the capability of setting up automation, and we can do so from different places. Just so you know, you can manage each of your columns by going to the drop down for the column. Okay. You also can manage the entire list by going to the menu up at the top. I'm going to go to the top right now and I'm going to click automate. I'm going to click automate. You can see that we could access flows, where from the flows category, which by the way, this is all in your handout, from the flows category, I could say set reminder. The reminder knows the date field that I have, and I'm going to choose due date. So I want to set up a flow that is going to be a reminder for the due date. So right now, because it's setting up a workflow, it has to be connected to specific applications. So that's what it's doing first. Then I can click continue at the bottom. So I don't have any interaction on that first step. Then what do I want to name it? Get a reminder. I'm going to say get a reminder for due date. And then remind me how many days in advance. So I want to say I want to be reminded 7 days in advance of that due date. I'm going to click create. So that's going to set up that reminder for that specific item. That's just one way to do that. I'm going to click done. It says my workflow was added successfully. Now, of course, I will get reminded of that. But what if I want a specific action that's going to be related to the assigned to person, which is actually a live field that we can actually use? So I'm going to go back to automate again, and I'm going to hesitate on rules. One other automate that is built in is we can go into create a rule. We could go into create a rule, and I could say If an item is modified, what do I want to do? Or if a new item is created, because what if this was an issue log and I need to know if somebody adds in a new issue? I could base a notification on adding a new item. Or what if I need to know if an item is deleted or a date is approaching? I'm going to choose a date approaches. It's a rule very similar to what we have. It's actually identical to the ones that we have in SharePoint document libraries. First, it wants to know enter a number of days before. So I'm going to say 7 days before, and which column is it based on? I'm going to choose the due date column. Now, how do I want to be notified? Well, I don't want to be notified. I want to notify somebody else. I could say I want to notify a specific person, or I want to notify the person that's assigned to it, the person that created it, the person that modified it, or I could choose myself. I'm going to say assigned to. So 7 days before that task is due, we need to notify the person that is assigned to that task. Once you click create, it automatically has that rule in this manage rules window. So this manage rules is a list of all the rules that are available that have been set up for this entire list. I'm just going to close that window, and I want to create one more just to show you another option. I'm going to go back to the main menu at the top, the ribbon across the top. I'm going to choose automate again. We also have what is called quick steps. So just like in a SharePoint document library, I can go to create a quick step where I could say draft an email, start a Teams chat. I could say set a value, or I could execute a flow. What if I wanted to start a Teams chat based on something that happens within this list? I could choose that. Then I have to choose. So it says show a command that will, from a selected or for a selected item, start a Teams chat. Do I want it to set a value, or did I want to change it to execute a flow? And then what do I want? Is it based on who it's assigned to? Is it based on who created it, modified it, or is it based on myself? So you have these little like templates that you fill out based on which one you choose. I don't use these quite as often as I do back in Automate with rules. If I go back to rules, I'm going to create one more rule here for you that is very, very common. I'm going to go to this, an item is added. Well, I'm going to actually say an item is modified. I'm going to say an item is modified. I can choose, so when an item is modified, if, so I could actually put in a condition. I could say if this happens, I'm going to say choose a column, and I'm going to say if the status changes, and I can put in what the status is. So I could choose a specific value. I could say if it's not this value, I'm going to say if anything happens in that status column. And then how do I want to be notified? Do I want to email, or do I want to actually set a value in another field? I'm going to say I want to email, and I'm the one that wants to get notified. I could enter in a custom message, say a record status was modified. Just so you could see, you could do that. I'm going to click create. So, and then here's my list of all of my rules that I can manage. I'm going to close that, and I'm going to make a couple of changes. Let's say that I need to modify the status for a field. I just want to edit this. So I have this task 2, the owner is Ethan, the priority is medium, the status right now is not started. I'm going to say in progress, which of course I would probably have that as a drop down, but just so you could see what ends up triggering. I could add comments, those kind of things. I'm going to click save. So I edited that record, changed the status of that, and now I'm going to get notifications in Outlook. So you can have built-in notification capabilities. You can also, of course, use Power Automate. One way I use it with Power Automate is I can have a person fill out a form. I create a Microsoft form, I can have that form be filled out, and I can have all the records come into a Microsoft list. And then I can have actions with my Power Automate set up to say, when that record is added, notify this person. If it says this, notify this person instead. We can have all this automation that is set up on your list so that as your data is being added or changed, we get those notifications to know things are happening. So Microsoft Lists is more like a database than we have with Excel. Excel, you have so many columns, so many rows. There is a limit to the amount of records you can add into a list, but it's so big that you'll probably never get there. But just so you know, there is a limit. And I forget what the number is off the top of my head right at this moment. But I got to tell you, these have really replaced a lot of my Excel files. But like you saw, some things don't come over perfectly. Sometimes before you go live with sharing it with others, you might need to do a little bit of tweaking, but it is still a better choice than some of the options that we have in Excel. So when we kind of think about the side-by-side comparisons of what exactly does a list do versus what's the effect in Excel, which of course you have these side-by-side comparisons in your handout as well. We have a lot of capability when it comes to using lists. I like the ability of having each column have their own data. So we choose the data type when we create the column. That is so much easier than doing it in Excel. So when you come to making a decision, which one should you use? Use Excel if you need complex calculations, you need charts, you want some pivot tables, you're working on large data sets and doing data modeling, you need offline access and advanced formatting capabilities. That would definitely be the direction, go to Excel. But Microsoft Lists, you need structured data for tracking. It's going to be tasks, it's going to be inventory, it's going to be issues, employee onboarding processes, those kind of things. You want to automate workflows and have full integration into Microsoft Teams so everybody can get to the list right from Teams or right from a SharePoint site. Or you need granular permission levels. Then you may want to consider going to a list instead. Okay. So as we kind of wrap up for the day, we explored key reasons from moving from Excel into a SharePoint list. You could have real-time collaboration, the granular permissions, seamless integration to Microsoft 365. There's different ways, of course, that you can create a list. You could do it directly within SharePoint. You could do it directly in Teams. You could import an Excel spreadsheet, start from scratch, or start from a template. Remember that SharePoint lists can make your data more secure, collaborative, actionable, while Excel is still going to be the tool that you're going to want to use for more complex analysis. So I do encourage you to experiment creating lists. Do it from one of your spreadsheets. See the difference. You know, it's not deleting your spreadsheet. You're still going to have your spreadsheet available, but do make sure that the spreadsheet the data is saved within a table. Okay, make sure it's saved within a table because the list only recognizes tables. So I hope you found this information helpful and that you feel more confident now, really understanding a little bit more about what exactly is a list, where you can actually be choosing the right tool for what your needs are. So at this point, Matthew, I'm going to hand things back to you.